Hello and welcome to The Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. Today's movie is Excalibur, the 1981 medieval fantasy movie that brought to life the mythical story of King Arthur, who, under the guidance of the sorcerer Merlin, rules over Britain with his Knights of the Round Table and does battle against the sorceress Morgana Le Fay. Directed by John Boorman and starring Nigel Terry, Helen Mirren, and Nicole Williamson, as well as featuring the likes of little-known actors at the time, Liam Neeson, Gabriel Byrne, and Patrick Stewart. Excalibur still proves to be the standard bearer in fantasy action filmmaking, with directors such as Zack Snyder and Guillermo del Toro citing the film as a big influence. Joining me today to talk all things Excalibur is Kent Hill. He's a screenwriter, journalist, author, publisher, and podcaster. You can currently hear him right now in the Cinema Nugent podcast. The link will be in the show notes. Kent's also a staff writer for Film Threat, and right now you can check out Kent's latest film, The Handyman, which he wrote, which is available on Tubi. I'll also have that in the show notes as well. Kent, I thank you so very much for joining me today.
Maddie, thank you for having me, mate, to talk about the Sword of Power, Excalibur, forged when the world was young, and bird and beast and flower and man were one, and death was but a dream.
That's the thing I love about this movie. I remember the first time I saw it. I must have been 15, 16 years old. It was back in the good old days, Kent, when free-to-air channels used to air movies like at 12 midnight, whatever. I was one of those kind of late night watchers, I
Mm,
click around, try
mm,
to find a good film and such. I think I
yeah.
came around the part where it was Arthur does battle against Lancelot and then he uses a sword to defeat Lancelot and he throws the sword back in the lake, the lady in the lake brings the sword back up again, and all that kind of stuff. And I was just hooked on it so much because I've watched, the 80s was just a time of like all those kind of swords and sorcery kind of stuff. I mean, I'm just going to have a list here of just sword and sorcery movies that came out from the 80s because there's so many of them. But the
Oh,
ones that I watched that had like a big kind of impact on me,
sure.
Conan the Barbarian, Legend,
Mm,
Lady Hawk, Highlander is a certain like a part of that as well. Willow,
sure.
the Ron Howard film.
Yeah.
Then you have the cartoons, Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, all these kind of things. There's so
Are you
much of that
excited
going.
for the Masters of the Universe movie?
Yes and no. This might sound weird, but I found that the guy wasn't buff enough. Does
Okay.
that sound
Yeah.
weird? Because I
Yeah.
grew up watching Dolph Lundgren, being Master Universe in
Yeah, yeah.
1971.
No, don't get me wrong. The canon film will always be my Masters of the Universe, but it's a little bit exciting to sort of see if anything, this isn't a motion picture version of Masters of the Universe. This is a live action version of Masters of the Universe, the cartoon.
Cartoon, yeah,
If
exactly.
anything, that's what it is, and that's a little bit exciting, especially if they lean into both ends, like not just the modern ones. The I haven't seen the Revelation ones and all those ones, but of course the classics from the 80s. If they lean into that side of it, they're going to hook me. I mean, I'm going to go either way. Because there was one little nitpick, and it's a tiny nitpick. Is I really wanted Dolph Lundgren to say "by the power of Grayskull" in
In the
that movie.
movie, yeah, yeah,
I know he says, "But I have the power" and all that. That's cool,
yeah.
but I really wanted him to say "by the power of Grayskull." So that's a moment that I'm looking for in this one, just to hear that, like "by the power of Grayskull." Yeah, but I'm with you. I really thought in my heart of hearts, if I were making a He-Man movie, He-Man would be there would be two actors. There'd be a Prince
Mm.
Adam, but when he transformed, he would become He-Man, like different, bigger, cooler. Like Ryan Reynolds' character in Free Guy. The
Right.
big buffer version.
Hmm.
That's how I saw He-Man, almost like an Incredible Hulk transformation. Like he
Well, yeah,
becomes
Bill Bixby to Lou Ferrigno, pretty much, right?
exactly, yeah, he
Yeah.
becomes the most powerful man in the universe. I mean, yeah, but I'm excited. Anyway, Excalibur. Sorry.
But going back to what we'll talk about, what with Masters,
Yes.
Excalibur was different when I watched it because it was
Mm.
much darker. It was a
Yes.
much more mature version of the fantasy swords and sorcery thing. It's much more serious. John Boorman, who was a
Mm.
director, like he's the guy who he's all out. This is this movie, and he brought it to life.
Mm,
he really brought a kind of maturity to it all. The world building was different, the language was different, everything about it was just different to what we watched, but at the same time it was kind of similar. So it kind of drew you in if you liked all that stuff, but when watching it, you're like, oh, this is a different kind of
mm,
fantasy filmmaking. It's not hokey, kind of like as something like a Beastmaster might be. It's not as say childish or something to say a Master Universe might be. It was kind of like almost like I guess you could say elevated swords and sorcery, if you can use that term here.
mm.
Do you remember the first time you saw Excalibur, and what was your first impressions of watching it?
I remember a very glaring thing that I didn't like about the movie the first time I saw it, and that's the bit with Percival at the sword at the end, where he
Hmm.
tells him to go throw it away, and he
Right.
doesn't. He comes back and he says, "No, you must." I just thought that was like it's like the thousand endings in Return of the King. It's just like why he should have just done it and then come back and he sees the boat and that just that one bit of like, well, that's stupid. He told him to do it and I couldn't do it. No, you've got to do it. So he goes back again. But that was the only a very trivial thing that I personally tripped over. But it's a minor, it's a minor issue, really. In a film that is the most romantic version of the Arthurian legend
Yep.
that we have, because John Boorman went for the ethereal romance of the thing, this the collision of the Dark Ages with Christianity, and
Mm.
uh, the modern world coming in and the ancient wonders. I mean, Merlin is a creature of the ancient world. He knows that his time is up. Just like the elves in Rivendell, they're packing their bags and heading out. Um, because he knows that in the modern world there's no place for magic, you know, kind of like cinema today. That's why it's all crap. You
Well,
know,
the interesting thing about the world building in the movies, and this what Borman has said numerous times, is that when he thinks he doesn't think as a story as history, he thought of it as myth, and it doesn't have to do with mythical truth. Sorry, it
mm,
has to do with mythical truth, not historical truth. So he can kind of
yes,
take over the world on his own terms, and he can kind of build it up the way he wanted to do it. But then at the
yeah,
same time, he talked about how the whole thing with the Grail in the movie, the Christian symbolism. He wanted to bring like the coming of Christian men and the disappearance of the old religions, like you were talking about. Merlin goes out,
yeah,
these other guys come in, and it forces kind of like superstition and magic to swallowed up into kind of like the unconscious of the world, and then out of that comes like a different sort of kind of like uh, you know philosophy, if you will, the theology that takes over to kind of like the fantasy kind of aspects of it. I think it's a really interesting kind of way that he balances both of them at the same time because he said numerous times he didn't want to do things. He didn't want to base a lot of things in like real places. He wanted to create like a world where you don't recognize anything with it. You kind of do,
yeah,
but you don't. And I think it's a really interesting way to go about doing it because, you know, for all of the legend of Arthur, no one's been able to prove that the guy's ever existed. It's more kind of like a myth than anything else.
yeah.
So to bring that to the screen, I think is really interesting how it kind of brought those two kind of worlds together into the
Mm.
one movie. And I think at first maybe it kind of took people off balance a bit, but when you watch it again and again, it just works even better every time you watch it. How he brings those two philosophies, those two worlds into the one world.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's one of those age-old stories about the sins of the father visiting back on the son.
Hmm.
I mean, what brings down Uther Pendragon is the same thing that brings down his son.
Right.
In the end, lust, greed, vanity, I mean, how many people have been undone? Darth Vader, right?
Hmm.
Uh, it's an age old story. It's the Arthurian character. Um, we've been very blessed to have come through and seen many iterations. The first version I ever saw of this story, aside from the book I read when I was a little boy that my grandfather gave me of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, was
Hmm.
the anime in 1979 of the same subject, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And then, of course, you move into the old films, the Rod Taylor version, and then you work your way up. One that doesn't get mentioned a lot is when is called probably because it's considered more of a TV movie. It was Merlin and the Sword,
Was
and
that with Sam Neill?
Merlin and the Sword starred Edward Woodward
Okay.
as Merlin from Breaking Moran. Shoot straight, you bastards! Don't
Of
make a
course.
mess of it,
Wicker
right?
Man. Yeah.
And yeah, and Candice Bergen, Murphy Brown
Murphy
plays
Brown. Yeah.
Morgan Le Fay, and Malcolm McDowell of Clockwork Orange is Arthur himself,
Hmm.
and Liam Neeson is also in it, uh, being the Excalibur connection there. But yeah, and a guy who gets left out too, who was one of the first pictures he was in too, is Kieran Hines.
Yes.
Was also in Excalibur, and he was also in another film with Helen Mirren, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover,
Hmm.
which is a whole nother episode. If you're looking for an episode that'll attract viewers, do one on The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. If you haven't seen it, don't read anything about it, just watch it. It's like the
Um,
drama. Just watch it.
yeah, I mean, people didn't know what they were kind of walking into with that one for definitely. That was Peter Greenway, was it the director of that? Was
Yep,
it? Or yeah,
yep.
that's right. Um,
Don't read anything, just watch it.
Boorman, he's a really interesting director.
Mm,
The highs, the lowest, the lows in his filmography. The highs leading up to Excalibur, Point Blank,
mm.
Deliverance. But then just before Excalibur comes out, you have the double whammy of The Exorcist Part 2,
Yeah.
Leo the Great, which is another movie which gets mentioned a bit here when in the making of kind of like this stuff.
Mm,
And he has talked about how has often talked about how he had a fascination with the whole kind of murder story since he was a kid, and like it was something he always wanted to do. So I read in different places that I think it was he had an adaptation for the Merlin Legend as early as 1969. He pitched it to the studio he was with at the time. I think it was United Artists. They said it will cost too much, but however, we want to do Lord of the Rings.
right.
And so he's like, okay, yeah, I can maybe kind of dive into that because he sees a lot of correlation between what Tolkien does and the Arthur legend and everything else, the One Ring, the Grail, all that stuff. He saw the relationship of Gandalf and Frodo similar to Arthur and sorry, Arthur and Merlin. So he saw a lot of that, and he started
Mhm,
working on it. And he had a bloke come in help him out. So a young Italian architect named Rospo Pellenberg. He kind of helped him kind of map out Middle Earth and everything else. And so they're doing this
mhm,
stuff. And then at the time, United Artists had a lot of kind of setbacks in regards to box office bombs. One of them being Leo the Great, which was the last film that Boorman did. And they said, we're not going to do Lord of the Rings anymore. The Lord of the Rings rights goes over somewhere else. I don't think it was Disney. Just having a look here, but it goes somewhere else, and then that animated film gets made, which supposedly Tolkien didn't want. He always wanted a live action movie. He didn't want animated.
mm.
So Boorman can go back to his Excalibur work. And then this is the time when him and that Italian architect, Rospo Pallenberg, they start fishing out the whole Excalibur world. And we already talked about all of this kind of stuff about in regards to the world building and such. However, imagine a 1979, 80 Lord of the Rings movie. Do you think it will look similar to what Boorman did with Excalibur? Do you think Excalibur was kind of like what a Lord of the Rings film would have been, like a 3 hour Lord of the Rings film? Can you see that being in a similar kind of vein in regards to the photography, design, and everything else? Because I think it kind of lends itself into that kind of fantasy realm that Excalibur eventually kind of created in 81.
No, you're absolutely right. And just for your viewers' sake, I'm not crying. It is hot as balls here in Queensland. I can't believe that this is what, April? We're getting
Mm.
closer to May, and I'm not rich enough to own a sauna, but I'm sitting in one, if you get me. Right. Now, back to Excalibur. Yes, you are dead right. I do believe that had Boorman done his Lord of the Rings in one film version, which Ralph Bakshi, that people sort of crap on that, but I actually like Ralph Bakshi's
Mm.
I saw that when I was a kid in the cinema. I enjoyed Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. And it does go to show that you can condense the whole thing into, I mean, I think personally Bakshi was only like maybe another, I don't know, 45 minutes off squeezing the rest of it in there somehow. Because I mean he managed to get the fellowship and the two towers pretty well wrapped up in his version. And yeah, I would have loved to have seen Boorman, who was certainly capable enough as a writer, and he certainly would have had the command to get whoever he wanted to come and help him craft that singular version of Lord of the Rings, which hey, look, I'm hands down, I'd pay money to see in an alternate universe, like in the multiverse. you know, if there's a version of it, shit, sign me up.
Mm,
Of John Boorman's 3.5 hour, Lord of the Rings made in his backyard there in Ireland.
yes.
Did you end up watching that Me and Me Dad that I told you about, but that Catherine made
No, I haven't. No, no,
documentary? Yeah, that's a
no.
good one for your viewers to check out too. Me and Me Dad. It's by Catherine, his daughter. Um, Very interesting portrait of not only John Boorman, but yeah, you'll see all of his backyard in there and parts of his backyard where Excalibur was filmed, and he even has Excalibur still um, in his yard. He's still with us. God bless him, John
Yes.
Boorman, Sir John
Sir
Boorman.
John Boorman. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of alternate reality, so I was reading that in 1979 it was announced that Boorman was going to direct a movie called Merlin and the Knights of King Arthur. That was going to be for Orion Pictures.
Mm.
They were planning to have it star Sean Connery, Lee
Ooh,
Marvin, and Max von Sydow as Merlin. That would have been an
nice,
interesting one to,
nice.
to see. It fell
And
apart, of course.
Of course, Sean did go on to play King Arthur, didn't he?
Yes, what's the one that the first night was that it? The one with
First night,
Richard
yeah.
Gere?
I
Yeah.
was still a boy when I first climbed this hill. Yeah, yeah. Sean Connery, you can't go wrong. Although I
No,
think Richard Gere was wrong for
yes.
Lancelot, really.
Yeah, I think so too.
I
I
mean, he
mean,
was, he's a handsome dude, sure enough, but I just didn't buy him as that. He's got that 1,000 yard stare because he's a man who isn't afraid to die, sort of thing.
yeah.
But yeah, but it's not bad. Ben
I
Cross
think,
is good as the bad guy.
but it's one of those times where in that era it was Kevin Costner as Robin Hood. You
Yeah.
had
Did you
Kiefer
like the Clive
Sutherland
Owen
in.
King Arthur?
Nah, the Antoine Fuqua, not a big
Mm,
one. There hasn't been much of the King Arthur stuff that I like outside of Excalibur. Even
yeah.
the Guy Ritchie kind of a Cockney
Right. Yeah.
Guy Ritchie
Yeah.
King
Where he
Arthur.
does the He-Man thing when he touches like
Exactly.
Excalibur. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Lock,
mean,
stock, and Lock, Stock, and the Sword and the Stone. I call that one.
Lock, Stock, and a Sword, very cool. I like that. That's very
Yeah.
good. Very
Because I
smart.
like the whole banter, like when the thieves are talking, not that John, the other John,
Yeah, exactly. That kind of took me out of it when I was watching it
Yeah.
because I thought that Guy Ritchie visually could have pulled it off, and I
Mm.
thought that having Charlie Hunnam, up and coming actor,
He
play
wasn't
King
bad.
Arthur would have been cool.
Yeah.
But then you have David Beckham just show out of nowhere, say, "Oi, get in
Left foot,
line,
right
Dan."
foot, your ass will
Exactly,
follow, right? Yeah.
exactly. So they just kind of took me out, and audiences agree because no one watched it and it bombed
I
and it
think it's
didn't go
magical
anywhere.
that such a handsome dude sounds like a little twat. Get going over there, would you?
And then so after Orion passes on it, Warner Brothers picks it up.
Mm,
Okay, so then you go to the casting.
mm,
Really interesting cast here, like I mentioned in the introduction. Because it's filmed in Ireland, you have like a lot of these kind of up and coming Irish actors that are in the film.
mm.
But let's talk about some of the leads first. Nigel Terry is a Brit actor. He
Yes.
portrays Arthur. So originally, remember you were saying before about having two people play like a He-Man in a movie. So originally they were going to have two
Mm,
people play Arthur. It's going to be a teenage Arthur and then an adult Arthur. And then they just decided
mm.
to have Nigel Terry play both in the film.
Right,
I
yeah.
think all you need is just a bad haircut and some
Yeah.
facial hair. And you can pull it off,
He's
right?
he's a 14-year-old boy with a 5 o'clock shadow.
Exactly. It was
Yeah.
35 at the time, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so it was his first leading role in the feature film because it was mainly a stage and television actor. That's another thing you're going to find here, a lot of stage and
Yeah.
TV actors here.
But but
Um,
but he was also in The Lion in Winter as Peter
yes,
O'Toole's youngest son, John. in which that film Camelot is also mentioned in O'Toole's speech when he's talking about his wife Catherine Allen of Aquitaine. He says he took as a queen a woman out of legend, not in Alexandria or Rome or Camelot has there been such a queen. So
Does it does it strike you that in the movie he kind of looks like Mark Hamill in the film as well? A bit of a Mark Hamill kind of vibe going on there as well. I kind of found it when I was
yeah,
watching. It's like he kind of looks like Mark Hamill, like they're trying to do like a fantasy medieval version of kind of like a Star Wars kind of thing here. Like in regards to,
mm,
he has the sword. He's the man of destiny. He's the one who's going to, take on the evil forces, bring everything together, all that kind of stuff. I
mm.
think there's some correlation there maybe, in regards
Yeah.
to
Well,
casting in the film.
especially in the scene after he draws the sword and he sort of goes for that walk in the woods with Merlin. It's almost like the
Yeah.
scene where Luke Skywalker goes with Yoda in a cave. Remember your failure in the cave, right? That sort of bit where he takes him out of the woods and like, what are you afraid of? I don't know, you know. Yeah, and Merlin's sleeping with like one eye open, but it's the
Mm.
dragon's eye or some shit. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah, yeah. No, look, great artist Steele. Um, it wouldn't be the first time. I mean, Luke Skywalker is King Arthur and he's Merlin and
Yeah.
right.
All of it,
And,
all of the
you know,
beats from those original Arthur legends and King Merlin and all that kind of stuff plays out again
mm,
and again in a lot of this stuff, whether it be Star Wars or
yeah.
what have
I
you.
mean, it's sometimes unavoidable because the
Yeah.
hero's journey that it all comes from is, you know, it just happens to be one of those stories. Doesn't matter how you package it, that people can get behind because we're all Arthurian sort of characters off on our little quests, and we go through all these trials and tribulations. Unfortunately, we don't always all have Excaliburs that we can rip out and have magicians over our shoulder giving us advice.
Well,
Uh,
maybe we do.
or-
Maybe the humble pen is our
hey, yeah,
Excalibur,
it's
you
mightier
know,
than the sword, isn't it?
mightier
Yeah,
than the sword. Maybe
there you go.
maybe we do have our Merlins. Maybe it's the people
Maybe
we
it's
read and the things
links.
we watch. You don't know.
Maybe it's links
Maybe it
for
is
men.
links. hmm
I
Um,
don't know. I use it
spray
every
enough of
day.
that.
It's not helping.
Spray enough of that stuff, and you look like the mists in the movie. That's for sure.
There you go. I won't need a fog machine.
No, just spray
Mm,
that, and then
yeah.
everyone come out smelling like they've been at a nightclub at 4 o'clock in the
Sweet
morning.
smell of success.
Yes. Speaking about sweet sort of success, I'm sure Helen Mirren
Mm,
has that about her. She plays Morgan
yes,
Le Fay in the movie.
like a fine wine.
Um, yeah, absolutely. She
Mm,
said that when she got the script, she didn't want to do it at first because she didn't quite understand what the hell was going on in the movie. And I think that's a kind of thing with when it comes to fantasy, sci-fi, kind of like those really the heavier ones, right? Like what Excalibur is. You can
yes.
kind of get lost within the world, the names, what's going on. But she said to her credit, like Boorman was kind of like her guide. He's like just breaking it down for her, like this is what we're doing here, this is what we're doing there, and all that. And then she's like, "Oh, okay, that's great." But she was kind of figuring out how are we going to say these lines. And I think like again, it comes to him as being the director of like just making sure that she can hit the right tone and do everything else in it. And at the end, I mean, if you're going to have anyone play kind of like this enchantress, right? And
Mm.
especially at that time, Helen Mirren, come on, that's got to be like I think
Can
definitely like number
you
one
can
choice
tell in
stuff
that
there.
one scene when they're you can tell that one scene when they're all at the table together that her and Liam Neeson were a thing,
Oh yeah, they
and
were a thing. Absolutely. Yeah, for a long
because
time.
you can see it very cozy and they like each other in that scene. You can tell there's no acting there, you know. And I don't blame her. Helen Mirren is still uh, so beautiful, and Liam Neeson is purported to have one of the largest trumpets in Hollywood. So yeah, him and Willem Dafoe are apparently two of the leading men that are amply endowed.
So they're waving their own Excalibur, are
Yeah, they
they?
call them. Their name is Kickstand in the bike club. Uh,
Have you heard that story that Liam Neeson told on the Graham Norton show about the first time him and Kieran Hines saw um Helen Mirren in the Morgana Le Fay costume. You ever seen
Yeah,
that? That was so good. For people who don't know, I'm going to put in the show notes, but essentially everyone's dressed up, ready to film, and him and Kieran Hines, because Kieran Hines and Liam Neeson are the best mates. And of course, it's filmed in Ireland, so they're just there. And Helen Mirren walks out with the whole kind of get up, and they just both looked at each other, and just went, "Oh fuck," just like that. Which is, I think it would be, is like
yeah.
an
I
apt
like I
reaction to
like the
have.
story he tells in that documentary that people can find on YouTube. There's a
Oh,
PBS
the
movie on
PBS
it.
one, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he talks about how he was out riding at the scenes at the end, and this bloke came up trying to buy his horse off him,
Hmm.
and he's like, "I can't sell it to you. It's not mine." And he took out a wad of cash. He says it would have choked a fucking donkey, and said, "No, I'm serious. I want to buy your horse off you." And he wouldn't take no for an answer. Apparently, this old
Wow.
Irish fellow was hell bent on buying Liam Neeson's horse. So
I
yeah.
know Helen Mirren, one person she didn't get along with previous to Excalibur was Nicole Williamson. And
Mm.
Nicole Williamson, for people who don't know, you know,
He
the
tried to lobotomize Dorothy in Return to Oz.
I mean, he's the guy that in real life was just known as like this genius actor, right?
Mm.
Stage, screen, but was also known
Brilliant
as like this
Macbeth.
he was a hellraiser as well though. He would
Mm.
punch out producers, he would walk off stages, he
Mm.
would get into shouting matches, he would drink till there's nothing left of him as well.
Mm.
And
He was the British
he and
Klaus Kinski.
exactly. Funny enough, Klaus Kinski was actually considered for the role of Merlin. He was actually they'll talk to him
That
about
would have been
Merlin.
different.
That would have been
Would
very
have been
different.
different. But
The
he did go on to play a Merlin type role, oddly enough, in a little film called Star Night, which also stars Harvey Keitel. For
oh, okay.
cineasts out there who'd like to go and check that out, Star Night, Harvey Keitel. It's also about a knight in shining armor. Harvey Keitel, the only knight in shining armor in cinema history with a Brooklyn accent. Anyway, sorry.
I don't know. Richard III, the documentary one with Al
Oh
Pacino.
yeah,
I mean,
well, okay, right, touche. Yep. Okay,
but
yeah,
he tries to do a British accent, but he can't hide
yeah.
the raspy.
Now was the winter of our discontent, my
Exactly,
glorious summer. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. No, yeah, touche. No, you're right. Yeah, the only, well, the second night with a Brooklyn accent. Yeah.
So Mirren and Williamson were in the production of Macbeth, and they had big blowouts, kind of like on the stage. And so when
Mm.
Williamson was cast as Merlin in this movie, Mirren had some very heavy reservations. But she said like on the film, they got along really well and became really good friends at the end of it, which I think was pretty cool. I
Yeah.
think Nicole Williamson as Merlin, that to me is kind of like still stands as the archetype of that kind of acting for that type of character, the sorcerer, the
Yes.
mentor, kind of that stuff. I guess maybe the person who lived up to it the most, and maybe has done better in it, is what Ian McKellen did as Gandalf later on. But you
Mm.
know, Nicole Williamson walks so Gandalf can run, essentially. I think anyway. And I think
Mm.
it makes sense that they're both kind of like these acclaimed stage actors as well, because I think they have to bring that kind of gravitas to what the
Yeah.
movie is. Um, but yeah, I think he's absolutely fantastic in this film. Like he was a very kind of he was a troubled soul, he was a dark man, but he's a fantastic actor. And
Mm.
sometimes when you take on these kind of performances, you like a Merlin or what have you, you need to have those kind of guys that can. You need to have the guys that are going to take the craft seriously. You can't have, for example, Marlon Brando coming in for a $1 million
No.
payday, playing,
And read
the
his
dad of
lines off a
Superman.
card or something.
Yeah, often I think there was like, even a nappy you might get like
Yeah, yeah,
like you can't have that. You need to have like what this guy does,
yeah,
and he's
yeah.
fantastic in the role as well. And I think he really sets the tone, the way he approaches things, he's the way he uses his eyes and his face and everything else. And I think he's just I think he's like to me outside of maybe the some of the tech aspects in the movie like cinematography and all that. The MVP for me,
Mm.
cast wise, is definitely Nicole Williamson for this movie.
Oh, look, yeah. I mean, and he gets the whole thing that Merlin's not really a man. He looks like a man, but he's a creature of a different age.
Mm,
You know, he's also the creature of a dying age in
mm,
this movie, and he knows it. I mean, there's a finality to Merlin in this movie. He feels like he's trying to set up the field so at least the next age will have something positive to start from. And it feels like it's something that his people, like in all mythology, sort of these wise races that are trying to help men who are eternally useless and are always just trying to kill themselves for no apparent reason, or women, or land, or money, or whatever else. And he's just like, ugh. And you can see it in his face how disappointed he gets when she's like, oh God, no, I did it again. I did this for you, father. I'm not doing it again. You know, I called on the magic so a bloke could have his way with a woman before, and look what it got me.
Mm.
But he's a sucker for punishment, Merlin. So he goes through it again.
There's also that scene where Arthur falls for Guinevere, and Merlin's like, she's gonna cheat on you. I'm telling you right now, and it's gonna be a big problem, and don't do it. And Arthur's like, ah, it'll be all right. And he's just like,
Uh,
motherfucker. It's fine, don't listen to me. It's all right. Don't worry. It's
here's
okay, I'll
here's
be
the
over
guy a
here.
couple of minutes ago was like, "How do I be a good king, Merlin?"
Hmm.
And well, if you listen to me, you might be all right, but if you don't, well,
Mm.
find out.
Speaking of setting the stage for like the next era, this film was definitely one of those movies that where like a group of young actors really
Mm,
kind of made their mark, and they were going to be the next to kind of come in. They were going to be the next to take over, like the Nicole Williamsons and all those kind of guys. So we
mm,
have it was shot in Ireland, so of course we have a lot of Irish actors here. Gabriel Byrne, who plays Uther Pendragon in the movie,
mm,
he said that John Boorman found a bunch of them at the Focus Theatre, and so he cast a lot of these guys, including him.
mm,
And he said that working on a film like this was kind of like a really kind of bewildering kind of experience, going
mm,
from the theater going to like this different kind of it's a different technique of filming, but at the same time, I think that the reason why Borman wanted these actors because he wanted to bring that kind of again that classical kind of clout to a lot of this stuff has in the movie. Liam Neeson as well in the film who plays Gawain. He said that he was doing a version of Mice and Men, and that was what caused him to be cast as Excalibur. And he loved
mm.
every minute of working in this. He said it was a really wonderful experience. Of course, he would. He was with Helen Mirren at the time, so I'm sure it was a very wonderful experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool. Some of these movies come along like a Dazed and Confused or what have you, where you just have like all these actors in that will come on to be big things. I think Excalibur is really like one of the prime examples how the casting of these young actors was really Borman had a really good eye for casting in his movies. I mean, even something like
Mm.
Deliverance, with John Voight and Burt Reynolds before Burt Reynolds had Tash and everything else, and he has a good eye for casting, and this movie was
Oh yeah.
definitely one of those cases.
Yeah. Look. Yeah. We often forget in a time where stars are all the rage, and so and so's in this and so and so's in that they all started somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's not often, or it doesn't happen that often anymore, where it's in one film or in a group of films that come out around the same time, and these a whole group of new actors will go on to become the next. I mean, who would have thought seeing George Clooney in Return of the Killer Tomatoes, um, right, that he would become George Clooney, right?
Right.
He's the guy from Grizzly 2, right? So look, and it's like incredible high school classes, like the film school classes that had like Coppola and Lucas and all those guys in the same class. It's like a ridiculous, but look, it's a conjunction that happens. How does it happen? Alchemy. How does
Mm,
alchemy work? It's magic. No
mm,
one really knows. But the fact that they all come together at the right time in the right place and they go on to such great things is, look, yeah, a lot of it's based on luck, but the reason that they go on is because they are so talented actors. Look at the career Gabriel Byrne went on to, for God's
mm.
sake.
Yeah,
There
absolutely.
is no Coke, right? Um, and yeah, and it's just incredible. Helen Mirren, who would have thought, right? Liam Neeson, who at that
Liam
point
Neeson.
hadn't done anything really.
No, I think, I mean,
Um,
afterwards, there'll still be a little bit of a slow go. I mean, the
yeah,
mission will be 86. It wouldn't be really until like
mm,
Schindler's List, right? 93. That's the thing that really
yeah,
made him big. But before that, He did little like just he
Yeah.
was always
He was in a
there
Woody
next of
Allen movie too. People forget Husbands and Wives.
next of kin. You ever seen that with Patrick
Yeah,
Swayze? He
yeah,
plays
with
Patrick
Patrick
Swayze's brother,
Swayze,
plays
yeah,
the
and Bill
hillbilly.
Paxton, yeah, yeah,
Ben Stiller,
Ben Stiller, yeah,
Helen Hunt.
yeah.
Huge
Wow,
movie that
it's
one. Yeah.
I know it's pretty spooky, and it's kind of sad to watch him now too because a
Yeah.
lot of these people aren't with us anymore.
No, they're not. Very
It's like
true.
watching Excalibur. Nigel Terry's, you know, not there anymore, and Nicole's not there anymore, and the other
Even
ones are slowly getting older, and yeah.
Nicholas Clay, who played Lancelot, passed away. I think in the
Yeah,
2000s.
yeah. Some of them
He
died.
passed
Yeah,
away.
some of them died young too. It's
But
sad.
so many people are still with us though as well. We talked before about John Boorman. He's still
John
chugging along.
Boorman. Yeah, goodness.
He's still here. Who else is still here? You still have Liam and Gabriel and
Yeah,
Patrick Stewart is still here with us as
yeah,
well. And
goodness. Yeah, Sir
I mean,
Patrick. Yeah,
I
we
mean,
should talk about him. He had some of his natural hair in. Of yeah, I know he had some of his hair. I like that story he tells in one of the many podcast interviews that he's done about how when he auditioned for Star Trek, they wanted to know if he had a hairpiece
Hmm.
so they could see him with hair or without before they made their choice. And he said, "This is how you know you hit the big time." He said they were going to get someone to fly back to my place in England and get my hairpiece that I have for such purposes, and then fly back to Los Angeles for the
Hmm.
audition. And ultimately, they went with no hair anyway. But he said that's that's how you know you're the big time. They send someone to go get whatever it is that you need because they want you. And yeah, that's cool.
Another person who auditioned for Excalibur, another Irish actor, was Pierce Brosnan. And
Yeah,
John Boorman talked about how Brosnan's audition was so bad that Pierce is like, I don't want to be an actor anymore. I quit. I can't
yeah,
do this anymore. And Boorman had pretty much like talk him down the ledge. And he's like,
yeah,
no, just keep going out there, keep doing it. And the next movie he ended up being in was Long Good Friday, where he plays the assassin, the IRA assassin. He doesn't have any lines in the movie, but it's like he does no dialogue. He has maybe around 10 minutes of screen time, but every time he's on screen, like something pivotal really happens. And he's on screen in the last scene where
mm,
Bob Hoskins is in back of the car and he has a gun pointed at him
yeah,
and he has all the reactions. So yeah, John Boorman pretty much. I think he essentially set the stage for a lot of Irish actors to kind of like
yeah,
to
yeah.
have a really fruitful careers afterwards. I
The
think they all
weirdest,
owe a big debt.
the hands down weirdest thing I seen Pierce Brosnan do. Do you remember the TV making of the EPK that came out for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves? It was on
No.
TV, but it's on the disc. It's on the the DVD releases and probably the Arrow release. And the host of the making of is Pierce Brosnan.
Wow. Okay. So that
You
would
can
be in
see it on YouTube.
Remington Steel time, Pierce Brosnan,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
he's got glass and he goes, long live Robin Hood and all this sort of shit. It's fantastic. You can see it on YouTube. It's the making of Prince of Thieves, like an EPK, and the host. This is back when they used to get celebs to host it, like Robert Ulrich
Hmm.
did one of the Batman, like the bat, the cat, and the penguin when
Hmm.
Batman Returns came out, who was in Ice Pirates. He was like the host for the making of that. It's something that doesn't happen that often. I remember when the first one I ever saw was when Mark Hamill, of course, did the. You can see it on YouTube too. It's called SPFX, The Empire Strikes Back, and it's about the making The Empire Strikes Back, and it's hosted by Mark Hamill, and R2D2 comes out and all that sort of stuff.
I
Yeah.
imagine it's just a lot of these guys that probably just under contract and hey, you want to try do
Oh,
this
yeah,
for a gig? You
flog the movie.
yeah,
But of
exactly
course, you
right.
should always beware of those movies that the actors come on the. I don't know. You having been to the cinema as much as I have in the past, when celebrities come on and they do those clips like this is the biggest logistical production I've ever been in. I can't wait for
Hmm.
you to see
Yeah,
Russell Crowe's Robin Hood, which is
yeah.
negligible.
Well, there's a new Robin Hood out this year as well, the Hugh Jackman Robin Hood.
Yes, the
Yeah.
death of Robin Hood. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I never been satisfied with. Well, I think my favorite Robin Hood movie is probably the one people don't like, which is Prince of Thieves. I just grew up watching that. That's a very
Wow,
much
people don't like Prince of. Do people not like Prince of Thieves?
There's some
Yeah.
people who don't like Prince of Thieves
Yeah.
because the whole Kevin Costner aspect of it.
Really?
But which
Yeah.
I always say,
Alan
Alan
Rickman's
Rickman,
the reason to watch that movie, but it's
exactly right. Yeah. But that I always loved that film. But I
Yeah.
never seen this. To me, there still hasn't been a proper um Robin Hood that I think can really has been made that really kind of lives up to the standard of what the
Mm.
legend is and everything else. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet.
I like
Even
I
like the
like
Errol
the
Flynn
TV
ones.
show.
Well, which one? There's so many
I
of
like
them.
the TV show. It was called Robin of Sherwood. It was back in the
Okay.
80s. That actually the dude who played Mordred, I can't think of his name, Addy is his last name. The dude who played Mordred in Excalibur was Guy of Gisborne in it. And it was also the first appearance, or one of the first appearances of, oh God, his name's gonna go. No, don't go. Sexy Beast. Um,
Kingsley.
no, no, the other fella,
Winstone.
Ray Winston. That's it. He plays
Okay.
Will Scarlet in it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because he goes, "How many? What are you in for, Will?" And he goes, "I killed two of the bastards. I will kill your monster."
Robert Addy is who played Mordred.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
He was also in Robin of Sherwood.
and interestingly, Charlie Boorman played the young Mordred in the
Mm,
movie, and Catherine Bourne was in the movie as well. She's because
yeah,
it's filmed in their backyard, so I'm sure
yeah.
they have
Geez,
stuff
why
in there.
not? Yeah,
Of course.
I'd love it if my dad had been John Boorman. I certainly would have loved to have been my dad's movies, but my dad
Speaking
doesn't.
of which, $11 million budget. So it's
Mm,
around inflation wise, like 45, 50 million today.
yeah.
Production started in 1979, 1980. So looking here, locations in Ireland, they are at the National Film Studios of Ireland, located in Bray, south of Dublin. Blah, 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 blah. Began filming principal photography mid-June 1980. Okay, the cast and crew, including horses, trained for 6 months with fighter ranger William Hobbs in medieval martial arts.
Mm,
And Terry English was an armorer. He designed the suits of armor. It was fitted for each like, specific actor, like the armor for each one. So there's more
yeah.
than 1,000 costumes that was made like in this movie. And other locations, Powerscourt, Childers Wood, Wicklick Head, Count Carey. But most of Excalibur was filmed near Boorman's home in Count Wicklow. So that's where we come to there in regards to the production and such. The look of
Mm,
this film, I think a lot of people talk about more than anything else. So when the film came out, it made like 35 million on an 11 million budget. So I think today that's probably like what 80, 90 million or so,
mm,
which is successful in my opinion. I think it did really well there. Um, a lot of the critical stuff was looks great. The costume, the look, photography,
oh
all that
yeah.
kind of stuff looks great. The plot, I think there were a lot of people kind of like Helen Mirren, like don't know what the hell's going on here. Alex Thompson was the cinematographer for this movie.
Mm,
He talked about that he and John Boorman always wanted to have green fluorescent lights always shining in the
yeah.
background so that you kind of like the ethereal kind of thing throughout the film. And it
Yeah.
really works. And the one thing that always stood out to me in this movie is how the armor just always seems so immaculate all the time, always shone, always looks
It's
like
the
something kind of
shiniest movie in history.
ever, right? I mean, and you're just watching it and like it
The
just looks
disco ball.
so good, like so
Mm.
well done. Um, if this was made today, what do you think they're gonna do? Like Iron Man CGI, kind of
They,
like
they
armor
they
kind of stuff, or
probably
what?
would. They probably would because the variables. I mean, when you think of great sequences that relied so much on the light of day,
Mm.
things like Cleopatra's entrance into Rome in the Elizabeth Taylor Cleopatra, the sequence was delayed months waiting for the right light to shine in the right way that day to get that shot right. And as much light as they were pumping in there, I'm sure that cinematographer said, "Man, we're just waiting for that right light, so that whole thing looks like $1 million." And it's a bit of art, but there's a lot of magic in it too.
And what's great about it is that there's a lot of talk over the last 5 years, like in modern filmmaking, how overinflated a lot of budgets are. A
Mm,
Netflix movie can be made for $300 million. Like it's a Netflix movie. How the hell does a Netflix get $300 million? Here's this movie, which is
yeah.
made for 11 million 1980 money, which is like again
Mm,
inflation wise. I think it's I did the calculations on Google. I think it's like what is it 30, 40 something million, which is
mm,
mid. mid-tier, right? Mid-tier budget making. But it
Yeah.
looks like three times that because it's just the care and the craft that went into everything. And it's something that I think is really missing today. It really
Yeah.
is. Those kind of movies that could be made in a mid-budget tier can come out, can make it maybe hopefully make double, just but enough, from the budget and everything else. It's
Mm.
just that art is gone now, and I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of people hiring visual effects, special effects houses that have like 1,000 people on staff, and then like they're still getting underpaid as well, which is funny
Yeah.
enough. A lot of technicians, but still, there's so much money going towards that. Whereas if you've got a good armorer, you've got a good costume designer, if you have a really innovative cinematographer that comes up with the idea with the green fluorescence in the background and everything else, and you have the patience to wait for those times for the things to kick in and get the right light and everything else, it looks great, doesn't cost as much. And I think it's stuff that's
Mm.
really missing today.
Oh, sure. And look, the best answer to this question that I've heard recently, um, and it's been said a few times, and it's a baseball sort of metaphor, but he says
Mm,
that we really need movies that are interested in hitting singles and doubles instead of home runs.
yeah.
And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that thinking because when you stake 300 million, right, and you've got to make $300 million back before you start turning a profit, plus advertising, you know, it's just it's that's why the tree falls over because if the top is heavier than the base, it's just going to collapse. You can't make films. You can't continue to make multiple films for hundreds of millions of dollars and hope that they all make a billion. You just can't. That's not smart business in anyone's book,
Mm,
you know. And I think there's a lot of people that keep saying I think they've forgotten how to make films for under $100 million. I mean, independent filmmakers make films for 40,000 bucks and upwards, and sometimes below that because that's all they've got,
yeah.
right? But they can't really bitch about, oh shit, I wish I had another 100,000. Well, guess what? The cavalry ain't coming.
Mm.
And so they just got to do the old fashioned thing and let's get creative with what you got. Back when Robert Rodriguez was telling us about his whole Rebel Without a Crew thing in that great book. Like you got to do it. Sometimes you got to do with what you got. And throwing money at the problem doesn't fix the movie.
Because a lot of the
Right.
times and we've both talked to so many indie filmmakers, you've been in
Mm,
that world, you've written films, you've had movies made.
mm.
When you're up against a wall when it comes to budget and you need to get something done, that's when a lot of innovation happens.
Oh yeah.
And
Some of the
and
coolest stuff, yeah. Some of the really coolest stuff in indie film, especially when
especially,
they run out of money and they've got like, you know, some sticky tape and some popsicle sticks. You know, look,
you gotta go you
we
you
used to
gotta
be
go
impressed.
MacGyver, right?
Yeah, we used to be. Well, look, we used to be impressed by stuff that wasn't CGI,
Mm,
and we used to sit and wonder how the hell did they do that,
yeah,
right? And that's because when it's in camera, there could be an argument that Excalibur is in the same sort of field as Blade Runner, as one of the great last sort of epic analog fantasy. I know one's fantasy, one's science fiction, but still it's all in camera. There's nothing in there. I mean, yeah, okay, in the different versions, they've touched things up and whatever. But back when they came out, that film is all in camera. There's no computers doing nothing. It's all artistry from the matte painters to the grips to the whoever's, right? To the everyone on the credits that people walk out on, all those names. That's why I've always sat through the credits of every movie I watch because all those people are responsible for what you have seen. And they deserve your time just as much as the movie. So, don't
very
forget
true.
about those people.
Absolutely. And I think actually interestingly, on that note, I don't know if you know who Bill Simmons is. He's a very popular podcaster, sports
I've heard the
personality.
name.
He has his own publishing kind of like thing now called The Ringer. So they do like lots of
Okay.
podcasts and stuff. So he does a show, and he was talking about how recently one of his shows called The Rewatchables, which is kind of similar to my show, The Rewind. You talk
Oh,
about
okay,
old
right,
films and
right.
such.
They look at
He was talking
classic.
about with his guests about how he's sick and tired of whenever watching a movie on streaming, whether it be Netflix or Amazon. And
Mm.
as soon as a movie done and the credits roll, that little thing comes up in the corner, and in 5 seconds it just moves on to the next thing. And he made
Yeah,
a
yeah.
plea, and
Mm.
his show's on Netflix now, and he made a plea. He's like, "Can you guys just fucking wait for like give me a
Yeah,
minute to just watch the end credits here because it's
yeah,
important to what I want to see what the end credits like. I want to read about the people and all that." And I think a
yeah.
lot of times, um, and I think that's what it comes down to. Sometimes when you have physical media or cinema experiences, you have
Mm.
the option a lot of times to
Yeah.
have that kind of
Well, I
stuff.
mean,
And I think,
I know it's not trendy and people have got other things to do. But look, I mean, it's look, I mean, you can't tell people to do anything. But I
mm,
mean, I do it as a point of courtesy because, I've seen how the sausage is made. So I have a different appreciation for all those people because they do work some crazy hours and sometimes get treated not very well.
mm,
Um, but without them, these films, I tell you, do not, just like the people that work at McDonald's when you want a hamburger, if those people call it quits for a day, guess what? You're not getting a Big Mac.
no.
And it's the same on a film set. If the crew, you know, don't all pull together and get it done, it ain't get done. And heads will roll because time is money.
Well, I tell you what, Boorman did fantastic with the budget that he had and the
Oh, yeah.
story that he told. I think to this day,
You
Excalibur
save
looks
money,
great.
make it in his backyard.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of like the indie kind of thing,
Ingenuity.
right? If you have access to something, I've talked to filmmakers where they had access
Mm.
to a factory, they had access to a house that was
Exactly.
betrothed to them through an auntie who died or whatever. You use
Yeah.
what you got, and you do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to there was a horror movie that's out now called Undertone, and I was talking to the filmmaker of that movie,
Yes.
Ian Tuan, and his movie is set within the one house, and that house is his childhood home
There you go.
that he made it in.
Yeah.
I mean that you got to do, and that movie became that was made for like $500,000, I think, that
There
movie, and
you go.
it's a huge
Yeah.
hit.
I've not seen Undertow yet, man. I'll get
Highly
there.
recommended. Highly
I will.
recommended. And for
Um,
everyone out there as well, if you haven't seen Excalibur, I don't know what the
yeah.
hell you're doing. Highly recommended. There's
Yeah.
been other, we speak before, other King Arthur movies. I know that back in 2009 I read that supposedly Bryan Singer, back when Bryan Singer was someone that people would hire,
Mm.
would possibly direct a remake. It didn't happen. We did
Yeah.
see what happened with Guy Ritchie's King Arthur. Didn't go
Mm.
well. Um, the
It
only
was
thing
it
that
was pretty
really.
cool to see Eric Banner though as Uther for
Yes, yeah, yeah,
before he killed himself. But
yeah.
yeah.
And Jude Law was fun in the movie as a
Yeah,
villain.
it's
I
the
think he's a
evil
fun
brother.
villain.
Yeah.
But like the Guy Ritchie isms
Yeah.
just didn't work out like how it did like with his Sherlock Holmes kind of stuff.
Although when Jude Law transforms to full on into Frank Frazetta's like death dealer, that's a pretty cool sequence. But unfortunately, it comes at the end of a lot of speculative stuff.
Yes. And I think just the way this film is made, it goes to show that a lot of times maybe I don't know whether it's the talent, I don't know whether it's studios, whatever. There's just something lacking sometimes when in the making of some of these really big sword and sorcery movies. I mean, they're not around anymore. But
Mm.
it's interesting because it seems like it's a bit of a comeback happening with it. We talked about
Yeah,
Masters. There's a
yeah.
Highlander remake coming out.
Mm.
This is some of
It'll be
these kind of
interesting.
things. Maybe
It,
Conan coming back. I don't know. We'll see.
yeah. It look like anything in Hollywood terms. If one of them lands and lands big, there's going to be a flood,
Hmm.
right? If one of them lands and like, because there's a lot of, I've noticed there's a lot of independent ones, like they remade Deathstalker or they did
Yeah,
like a reboot of Deathstalker.
very
Uh,
practical events
there's
effects. Yeah.
some great indie sword and sorcery stuff going on. So look, we could be on the crest of a new wave. I personally would love to see like if they were going to do this Arthurian story real justice, to do the trilogy, do
Hmm.
father, do Uther, then Arthur is like the first one ends with Arthur is born. The second one ends when he pulls the sword, and the third film ends when he dies. and that's the trilogy.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.